Hi, in this video I'm going to go through how to set up a basic file inside Harmony so that way you can get started animating. So start out, when you load it up, you'll see the screen where you have to first create a new scene with a bunch of settings. And so first I'm going to give it a title, and I'll just call this exercise, and then I want to navigate to where I want to save it. And when it is saved, you will see that it creates an entire folder in which to house your files. So let's see, I'm just going to say animation examples and select this folder. And here's where you set your width and your height, but you'll notice I can't actually click on these. If I do want to change these settings, you can either do a drop down and do one of the pre-selected ones, 12 frames per second, 24 frames per second, and if you want to change it, choose the plus sign, and that'll give you the option to change these inherently. So if you want to do square, you could change this to something like 1200, and I'm pressing tab to go between each one by 1200, and then update this to, say, something like 12 frames per second. I'm going to keep mine at 24 frames per second in 1920 by 1080. That is standard HD. And you then say create scene. And it'll take a second to load. It's kind of just going on in the background. And there we go. Now when you load yours up, you will often see it starting in the default workspace. And it'll again take a second to change the workspaces. But here's where you'd want to make a couple modifications. Since we are working with hand-drawn animation, I'm going to go to this drop-down and switch to hand-drawn. You can also get to this by going to Windows, Workspace, and choose Workspace, and then choose Hand Drawn if you don't see that tab at the top. And again, I'm going to switch it back. And one setting that you want to make sure that you have on is having your mouse, as you move through each place, or your pen or stylus, focus. And so you'll see that when I shift between each one, there's a red outline between each panel. So I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, and make sure that Focus on Mouse Enter is selected. It's just going to make it a lot easier for us as we're navigating through our animation. Now, when you set up, you'll see your drawing panel down here. This is our timeline. Your red playhead allows you to scrub through. And notice as I'm scrubbing through, it's also moving through my X sheet. These are mirror images of each other. Whenever I create a drawing, you'll see that it's filled in over here, and you'll see it over here as well. You can change the exposures in either place, and they're reflective of each other. One more setting I want to make sure to have on is this thumbnail button, which is right here. Just makes it a lot easier to see the actual drawings. Inside here, this is our stage, and I can zoom in with either the minus button, make sure that I'm inside here, with either the number button, 1, zooming out, or 2 zooms in. So 1 zooms out, 2 zooms in. And this works the same on any of the panels that you're in. So 2 zooms in, 1 zooms out. To create an exposure, which is where we actually have our drawings, I'm going to either draw on our panel, and make sure I'm inside the pencil tool. This is one of the main tools we'll be using for drawing. Once I create a drawing, you'll see it creates a thumbnail down here of that drawing. And you'll see it's also created number 1 here. If I wanted this drawing to hold for a certain amount of time, I can extend it out by clicking and dragging. So if I want it to hold for 6 frames, notice that now, as my playhead moves through, it's going to hold for 6 frames. Same thing here. I can also change the exposure by clicking down here, holding down Shift, and selecting my overall exposures. So I click on the top, hold down Shift, click on the last one. I can change this, and you'll see that it changes it in both spaces, which is super cool. If I want to get rid of a drawing, I can either go to my selection tool, draw a selection around it, and press delete. That's one way to do it. I could also right click and say delete, and that deletes it as well, controls the undos. Or If I'm inside my pencil tool and I hold down Control or Command, that brings me right back to my lasso tool, very similarly to working in Illustrator or Photoshop. I'm just going to press Delete. So these are the basics of getting started with your workspace and your timeline. Next video, we'll jump into using some of the tools and creating a set of drawings.